Hey, it's just Trish, and I'm doing a 3-part series that's going to walk you through all the parts of the Christian Learning to Read program, the Christian Light Education. So the very first part is this one, and this is going to go through the teacher's manuals on the Learning to Read and what's included and how they're laid out. The second part, which I'll have linked in the description as soon as I get it up, will go through all of the bookwork. And then you will have the part that will go through the language arts. So that's the third video. So this is the first one of the 3. So here we go. These are the readers, which I will get into, the flashcards, and the teacher's manuals, and then the actual workbooks. There are also phrase cards. There are phrase cards, and then there's word cards. I did not buy the word cards, and I already own the phrase cards. And I'll show you what I did. Starting with the teacher's manual. Learning to Read comes with 2 teacher's manuals. The first half of the books, and then the second half of the books. So let's begin in the teacher's manual. So you go right into the table of contents. You get the series. They give you the different books that will be used in the series after you learn to read. The very first part I want to tell you about is the introduction. This will tell you about every component that they use from the light units, which are the workbooks, the meanings and the symbols within them, the primers, which are the readers. We'll tell you about the flashcards, about using the teacher's guide, and then within teacher's guide, how all the different components are set up in teaching this. I look through them the first time. I actually teach learning to read off the workbooks and not off the teacher's manual. And I'll talk about that on another video. All right, so they actually have a rubric set up for how to evaluate how they're reading. So if you're not familiar with evaluating reading, this is what they do. Then you have the outline for the way the workbooks are going to go and what's being taught. This will tell you what symbol you're learning, that you're learning the skill of the sound D. You're using the picture card duck. This is the rhyme you're memorizing with duck. Your sight word is do, and you're writing the letter D. What I like is that makes these cute little adorable cards optional. I like the cards. I feel like there's something cute. We will end up hanging them up. I will tell you, I thought I could washi tape them onto the wall, and when I peeled the washi tape off, it took part of the card. So they're durable. They got a nice gloss to them, but be careful. So I'll probably just tape or laminate them. I might actually just laminate the fronts. And then on the back, you'll have the rhyme and you'll have the symbol. So you can do this one where you have them sound it out and then remember what word duck goes with it. But they're beautifully colored. And they're separated by color. Like these are your consonants. These are your short vowels. The blues are your long vowels. And then there should be one for and there's your digraphs. So they have their own colors to help denote what they're for, and they're typically in alphabetical order when you open up the package. They're optional, but I consider them a good thing to have. And from your very first Learning to Read book, you would want to get these. Okay. So in the lesson plan, there's also this layout. This layout tells you by day, if you did their entire program for kindergarten, what you should be doing when. So this is your Learning to Read. This is when you'd be doing your Bible lessons. The first number is the book number. The second number is the lesson number. And then this is the math. So it's not until you get to week 10, day 47, that you would start language arts. So here's the thing. For some of my friends who are thinking about trying to implement this in kindergarten and going very slow, I would probably then say try and just do the first 9 weeks. or maybe to book 4. Not quite book 5. In book 5 is when you would start, so maybe the first 8 weeks of first grade, if you wanted to start this in kindergarten. I will tell you, with as fast as it begins, it's thorough, it's gentle, but it will move fast. In my teaching my children, I found it better to just wait until first grade and then begin reading versus trying to begin early and frustrating yourself. Also, I have done this with a second grader, and I thought we could just start at book 5. Because we started at book 5, it took us probably it took us a long time. We'd have to put it down and start over, put it down and start over for a full year to do 11 weeks worth of work. I should have began at the beginning. It is easier to begin at the beginning and go through it as a review until you get to where they need help in. It builds confidence. It builds familiarity with the way the program works. And it really is not even cheaper, because it would have been much better if I had done that from the beginning. But I've always had great success. My third grader, we started in second. We had to put it down, and then we restarted again in third grade. He went into third grade at a 0.8 reading level. He finished this program, just the learning to read, just this system and the language arts, at a 4.8 reading level. My first grader did this and only this. She finished it and got into 2 books into the readers, and she finished at a middle and second grade level. And I used the California Achievement Test 1970 to test those standards. But it will tell you when you're going to start your language arts. It will also tell you when your reading would end, and then you would pick up now your reading to learn. So they have it 2 categories: learning to read, and then reading to learn begins here. At this time, I don't know if I'll even touch this. I've done them in the past, but I'm not sure if I will be using them this coming after this. We might go back to ACE. We might not. But for now, here we go. So your light units, your teacher's manual, it will give you, the lesson 1. And this is set up just essentially for a classroom. I do not run the program this way at all. I do everything that's based on the pages. There's a lot of hand-eye coordinating. So here's one of the very beginnings. I'll show you this in the book. These dot maps are amazing. Do not skip them. Do not consider them to be worthless. These dot maps are all about hand-eye discrimination and being able to copy. And they tell you what is correct and what's not correct. So, it's not going to be messy. In the book, you have your reader. And what's really cool about this is that you're reading this story. Mine typically color the picture as I read the story. At the end of the story, I ask them comprehension questions. All right, and that your lesson is laid out. So you always have the little pages within the book, which I love. In the very back of the first manual is your scope and sequence that tells you the sounds being introduced, the sight words, the writing, and the concepts. For each one of these boxes is a light unit, is a workbook. It will give you a list of the concepts. It will give you the list of the concepts of when things are being introduced. So your beginning blends, your ending blends, your consonant digraphs, your consonants. So if you need to go back and feel like you need to pull from your workbooks, you have a list here. Okay, I said the phrase cards are optional. And the word cards are optional, because in the back of the book, they list out what are your word cards. So all of this is the list of word cards and what book and lesson they're introduced. If they're in bold, they're a sight word. And then phrase cards are listed here. All right, so here's what I want to show you. You can buy the phrase cards. They're big. They're mammoth to me. And this is what they look like. They kind of remind me of when I went to school. They're very kind of old school. Or you can make your own. And I make my own by using my comb binder. If you haven't seen a video where I talk about my comb binder, I'll stick it here or over there. And these are just plain index cards that I put stickers on. Now, following their method, I wrote the card and I wrote the number. Now, I'm not using all of the words that are in the sight word or in the word card list, like dad, damn, sad, mad, am. I'm not doing all of those. I am just doing the sight words. So we go back over and review it. I put any of the phrases that we've learned so far, and of course I pulled this from the scope and sequence. And then I've just gone through and I wrote out all of the sight cards, and I wrote what numbers. So when we're practicing this and this is not near our curriculum, I know where we need to stop. Simple as that. So you can see they're all in here. And I just sat down. It didn't take me any time at all. And I can do the same thing, and I might very well do the same thing for the phrase cards, because having all of these, this is so much easier than this, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. But I did want to show you that you don't have to buy the words or the phrase cards. You have a list to make your own. There even is a list of where your sight words are. There's an index of your sight words in here and where they show up. All right, this is the learning to read spelling words. This is important. There's two types of spelling that happens. You have a set of spelling words in your learning to read, and you have a set of spelling words in your language arts. Real quick, the spelling words in your learning to read are not necessarily handed out like here's your spelling test, but they're all phonetically able to be sound out to read and sound out to spell. And you have a list, and these are covered in your book. They're not really called spelling words. They're called, in the very beginning, they talk about the spelling. The teacher guide contains a list of spelling words for each lesson beginning in Light Unit 2. Lesson 1, spelling sometimes appears in the Light Unit as skill application involves spelling the name for a picture. So these words are really going to come down to spelling a picture. You won't even realize you're doing this type of spelling in the workbook, but you are. All right, they do get into penmanship. They talk about how it's written and the motions. You have teaching tips. I love this. This is one of my favorite pages. I have printed and laminated this, copied and laminated this many times. And this is all the phonetic rules. So all the reasons why you can't understand why things are spelt the way they are, right here. And then you also end up with all the spelling sounds and the markings of those sounds, which this has also been a page that has saved me many times. The thing that you might not realize is there's a ton of enrichment activities that are completely optional, and they give you a list of what to do here. They also have these beautiful pictures that you can photocopy and color and cut, and they go along with the pictures they're learning for doing the sound. So all of these are for consonants, and they tell you what book they belong to as you're learning new ones. Here are your vowels that begin in 101 to 105. Here are some games that you could do. They have these number cards you can print and laminate. They have a train pattern. They even have sign language. And then they have some of the glossary terms. And then a large reading assessment sheet if you need it. And then in the back are your alternative tests. So if you're in a situation where you're not sure where to put, another option to do is to get the teacher's manual, make a photocopy of the alternative test, and then test them through the alternative test until you find where they're struggling. And this is another way to assess them, to find out what book they are in if you do not want to start at the very beginning. But it does require you to get the book ahead of time. So this is the first manual. Some things I want to show you in the second manual. The second manual is set up just the same, but in the back, you still have the scope and sequence. You still have concepts. You get the flashcard words and the phonogram words also, so you don't have to purchase the first book to get that. Again, your spelling words are there, but this one goes all the way in through 110 where the other one stopped. And then Your handwriting's still there. And then your enrichment activities, again, are now including a printable for your last two, for your long vowels. All right, so that is essentially the same. And then you have, again, your alternative test. All right, so that's the teacher's manual.